Hi guys, it's Luke Pearce and this is the final whistle.
Hello and welcome back to the final whistle, brought to you by the Rugby Connection podcast. Now our next guest is actually responsible for blowing that final whistle in the game. He has refereed at Under-20s World Championships, 7 tournaments across the globe, Premiership, Challenge and Champions Cup, 6 nations. He's been everywhere and probably one of the best to do it in the modern day. It's Luke Pearce. Luke, thank you so much for coming on. How are you getting on?
No problem. Good. Thank you, Murray. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And you are our first Northern Hemisphere-based referee.
It's good to know. I didn't know there's another referee on here, so I'll have to go back and see what the Southern boys are saying.
We've only had the one referee previous, and it was Ben O'Keefe. So there you go.
Yeah, he should be all right then.
He was very good, very informative, and just a good laugh. And so the bar's quite high when it comes to referees.
Yeah, go for it. I'll try and compare with Ben. You'll be fine.
No worries. First question, we ask all our guests this, but it's kind of a two-parter because you're a referee. So one, what actually got you into rugby in the first place, and then what got you into refereeing?
Into rugby. I mean, my family have grown up in rugby for years and the last generation. So when I was a kid, I got taken to the local rugby club at Exeter Saracens by my dad and never looked back really. And it was through him that he was a former referee, and it was through him that encouraged me to give it a go. So that was kind of what started me off. And yeah, I never intended it for it to become a career. I never intended it to pay the bills, but I've been lucky enough to do it. And yeah, it's just sooner rather you know it, you've been in the job 12 years, and it's just time has flown by.
That's crazy. You were the youngest referee to be on the RFU board for selection, weren't you?
I think I was. I think it may have been beaten now. I think Christoph Ridley's a bit younger than me, and it's just like times have changed. You know, everyone's going to get a younger doing the job, and I guess that comes down to fitness and everything else. But it's I think I was at one stage, but it's just now being 35, just trying to hang in with the younger lads.
It's plenty of years to go. Don't worry.
Yeah, I hope so. We'll see how we go.
Just in the introduction, I mentioned that you've been everywhere. You've done like Africa Nations Cups, you've done 6 Nations, Junior World Championships. How do you get around? Like, who pays for all that travel? Because that clocks up some mileage.
It does, yeah. I mean, who pays for it? I mean, I guess the World Rugby title pay for it in the end. If it depends what tournament you're going for, but each tournament obviously have their own budget and they have their own finances behind that. And you just got to work with what they are willing to do to make sure that you get to the place at the right time and as quickly as possible, really. And it's funny you should say that, with European Cup starting off now in 4 days time, with the advancement of South African teams in there. Obviously that adds another realm of travel and another dynamic to what is already a pretty compressed season. So we'll see how that plays out, and hopefully that'll be a great addition to the tournament, and we'll see some brilliant rugby now added to the European Cup.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I like the fact that they've just called it the Champions Cup, because it can't be the European title anymore, because you've had I think Joe Marler said that during the week. It's a European title that they're.
Yeah, I'm a bit more old school. Like, I got brought up in the days of the Heineken Cup, and then obviously it went away and got changed. Yeah. And I've always called it the European Cup for some reason. I'll have to tweak it, I guess, because we're going to a different continent now. But yeah, it's exciting for it. I mean, I think, and I don't want to say anything out of turn, but maybe rugby was in need of a bit of a freshen up and a bit of a change, especially after kind of the negative news based after COVID and the financial impact on the game. It's needed something a bit refreshing. And in a world there's enough negativity, hopefully that this addition of the really good sides will make this tournament even better than it was, which was probably one of the best tournaments in the world anyway. So it's a pretty exciting stage, I think. And it's, like I said at the start, it's nice to have something positive and positive energy to go into.
No, I totally agree with that. We need positive energy in this world, especially just like you said, like everything going on. But I feel like rugby is more positive than most sports. But I'm not a referee, so I can't imagine what happens on a weekly basis. How do you deal with that personally? Because even if I think you've had a good game, there will be thousands that or you haven't had a good game and you're biased and this and that and the next thing. And
Yeah, no, I think it's part of the job, Murray. I mean, you got to have thick skin in this job. And one thing that we, in the most recent weeks, and I guess the hot off the press kind of stuff in the last few months, I guess, about referees being victims of abuse, which obviously we all know is really bad and obviously wrong. We've got to try and make sure that we don't become oversensitized to stuff. I mean, we know that we're in a job where people will agree with us and disagree with us. We work in a decision-making environment. Where I think the line is correctly now being drawn is that once that enters into the world of abuse, then no one deserves to get that, whether they're playing, reffing, coaching, watching. But we're aware that we're open to challenges. We're open to discussions after a game because that's the nature of what we do. And one thing that we're lucky enough to work in, or unlucky enough, is that rugby is pretty grey. And there's a lot of laws that get put into place in certain areas of the game which don't get brought into others. And if you wanted to watch a game of rugby with a law book, you will find there's a lot of transgressions that don't get picked up and others that do more regularly. And it's just trying to find that level playing field somewhere to get an entertaining game. But yeah, look, we're used to it. I think refereeing in any sport, you have to become accustomed to lots of questions and lots of challenges. It's just how that comes across, and I'm sure we'll come on to it. But with the advent of social media especially, it's just trying to find that balance again of where we want to be as a sport and where we want to be as a society really moving forward.
Yeah, I just think whether it's me, you, the players, coaches, just would like the people that send like hurtful messages, like, would they come up to you and say it to your face? That's how I see it.
Yeah, I don't think they would say it and I'm saying they, I don't know who these people are.
Yeah, of course.
Sadly, one thing I would love is social media to have a name and an accountability behind everybody, because I think that would perhaps solve a fair few of these problems. But yeah, I don't know. We work in a sport now where it's professional, and with professionalism obviously brings money and brings in a lot of people's money in the public domain where they want to go and watch and support their team. And there has to be an understanding that comes with passion, and that comes with a lot of time. I live in Devon, and I know a lot of people that will travel away for Exeter matches, for example, and they played Newcastle a few weeks ago, and clearly that's a long way away and would cost a hell of a lot of money. And people believe, rightly or wrongly, that they then have a say in how that game has gone and how it's refereed. And we can't be naive enough to think that if that didn't exist, then I wouldn't have a job in this game, because we wouldn't have professional rugby. So whilst I'm not condoning any that of abuse or questioning, we have to be open to challenges, just in the right kind of way. And hopefully we've nailed that now, and hopefully moving forward, and especially before the World Cup next year, which will see the pinnacle, we've got a lot. Everyone knows where they stand in terms of questioning refereeing decisions or not, and we're not closed. We're certainly not a closed shop, but we can't be posed questions, and we're trying to do more and more of these kind of things to make sure that people know that we can be discussing decisions with, because that's the world we live in. Yeah. It's just making sure that doesn't overstep the mark, which it has done in the past, clearly.
Evidently, yeah. No, that's fine. And we have got I say fan question. It's from our other co-host. It's from Cam. He's asked, how does the whole ref discourse affect you personally? But you've kind of already talked on that you have to have thick skin.
Yeah, and it's easy enough to say. Putting it into action is far different. And I think every walk of life you have that element of what's the word to use? Not abuse, but questioning anything that you do in your job. But we've got a pretty robust system within England Rugby as well, who I work for primarily, and we have psychologists. We work together closely as a team of professional referees, and making sure that if anyone's going through any of that element of trouble or have had a trickier game on the weekend than others, that we're there to support each other. And you've only got to look at the Wayne Barnes recently in his game in France, in South Africa, that we rallied around him. I had that similar experience in other matches during the summer as well. And this job no longer is anybody good enough before, during, or after to do this job on their own. So it's trying to find that balance and making sure that we're there to support each other without, pulling up the drawbridge as such to the general public and to media, and making sure that we're answering the right questions as well.
No, that's fair. I love that. And I love how open you are discussing all this as well. So thank you for that.
No, it's good. It's important that we come across in this way. It's certainly not, we don't want to ever get to a stage in rugby. One of the values is that we can discuss in a bar after a game over a pint.
Of course.
I think we should bring that back. The more we have that, I think the less we'll have of this perceived cloak and dagger environment with supporters or coaches or just general, members of the media, because I think we can have, whenever you have these face-to-face chats in a bar or a social environment, it's far harder to say some of the things that you would do online. So hopefully we can bring that element back at some stage in moving forward.
I mean, I'm always up for a social. Just put my name in there. Just put my name in there. Another co-host of mine, Harv, has asked, what is the greatest match you've been in the middle of?
I mean, there's been a few. I don't tend to remember the matches as matches as such. I remember some of the bigger games that I was involved in terms of the label on them. And whenever you're involved in a Six Nations game or a Heineken Cup game, even a Heineken Cup final, the knockout stages, I think the Rugby Championship matches, all these games kind of come into your head, and you remember each game for different reasons. And I'll never forget the Munster-Toulouse game from April this year, or May this year, where we had penalty shootouts, and that game was unbelievable. I think it was 20 all or 21 all or whatever it was going into extra time, and then to have those penalty goals, it was a pretty surreal experience. And as a referee, whilst no one wants to see their team lose in a knockout game, we go back to that discussion point a second ago. We had the ability then to walk back from the Aviva to our hotel, and the environment was such a euphoria behind that game that we stopped in a few pubs on the way back, and people were, both teams of Munster Toulouse were welcoming. We chatted to supporters, having a couple of Guinness going back. And you remember rugby for those reasons. That's the reason that we all started it in the first place, is to, I think that we enjoyed, chatting rugby and talking rugby to other people. And that will be something that will live long in my memory, along with some of those other kind of bigger phase games, I guess. But yeah, it's before you know it, you've got this catalogue of certain matches that you remember pretty well. And, COVID only added to that with, travel to Australia. Matthew Kyle and I went down in September last year, and, to have those games all on the Gold Coast, to go through quarantine, then to do these matches and to, live in with two teams for 2 weeks was a pretty unique experience, which hopefully we won't do again. But, was certainly something I won't forget about.
The traveling part, definitely do again, but not the
the traveling is great, Murray. It's enjoyable. It soon gets wearing at times, and it's quite nice to have some downtime and be able to not be in the car. But again, it goes back to the job that we do, and the job has changed so much. It's been involved now a pretty much a 12 month season. So especially as we work towards next September, it's making sure that you're out there to give it the best shot you can. Now,
I'm not saying he's lying or anything, but I just want another referee to confirm this. But when we had Ben O'Keefe on the show, he said that selection process is very wafer thin. You right now won't know if you're doing Six Nations because it's not that block yet. Is that for every referee kind of like a block?
Yeah, exactly. So World Rugby work in a 4-window cycle. So obviously from a Northern Hemisphere perspective, we start at Six Nations, we go to the June or July tour, Rugby Championship, and then November. So there's our 4 international blocks. Obviously between that, we work for our employers, who mine is England Rugby and the Premiership primarily. And then European Cup, then we're involved with if we pick for that. But yeah, so we get picked on our international matches, depending on how we referee, both domestically and within Europe. And obviously with our form with international matches as well. So normally, we hope to find out in the next probably 10 days to 2 weeks, what games, or if we're in the Six Nations, and then you perform, and hopefully that selection process takes care of itself and you're involved in the next window. So yeah, it's now coming to the steep end. We've been in a 4-year cycle. Every World Cup we work our way around, and the team gets bigger and smaller, and then we'll find that selection for the World Cup in the start of May next year. So yeah, it's a nervy time, but an exciting time as well. And hopefully, we'll see the best referees in the world being able to showcase quite how good they are, and that environment at a hell of a tournament will be next year.
Oh, I can't wait. And you said that the best referees will be at the World Cup next year, and so there's no reason you're not going to be there. And I'm not just saying that. So as soon as we announced Luke Pearce was coming on, the amount of comments and messages we were getting saying he is the best referee on the planet. So,
very kind. It's very kind, but it's I'm just trying to think. Obviously, you're based in Scotland. I'm trying to think if my record with Scotland. I think I've only lost 1 game since I've been refereeing them. But we'll see how we go.
You did Scotland, Australia, and we won't talk about that.
No, I mean, you had a chance to win it with the last kick as well, but it's always a bit easier with that as a ref. But it's, it's funny with interpretation of countries who think referees are really good or not. You could, I believe, maybe I'm just biased because most of my colleagues or mates, but you can now put a very small net over the top 15 in the world. Because primarily majority we do is very, very similar. And of course, you're going to have the odd similarity or difference in personality or approach. And that's what we want to maintain in rugby, and again, you go back to that grey element, and that's what adds to the grey element. Sometimes not every team play the same style. Not every referees in the same style.
Of course.
And of course, that adds to that consistency message, which people and teams want, but isn't always possible. I think consistency is possible in the 80 minutes or 90 minutes, however long that game is now. Yeah. Getting that consistency over 6, 12, 20 games, however many there are on a day, is more of a challenge.
I'm glad you meant nobody's actually asked that, because you do get this, the keyboard warriors trying to be smart about it, and I'm not giving them the acknowledgement. I'm not writing the questions down because they don't deserve it, and that's basically how I am. But there was a few that asked about consistency, and I was like, I don't really want to ask them about consistency, because like I said, it's a friendly chat, it's getting to know them more as a person. I would say you're pretty consistent, because you, especially like you said, in that 80 minutes, something will happen in the first 90 seconds. You'll be like, right, no, we're not doing that, and then the rest of the team knows, right, we can't do that for the whole 80. And you seem to be very authoritative, but I love a referee that explains. And I know it may sound stupid to a referee, but see if there's a penalty for whatever reason, and you go, number 6 or for whatever, you come here, why I'm giving the penalty is this. I love that, and you're one of them that definitely stands out for me to do that does that.
That's very kind. I think one thing that we got in rugby again is that ability to have player-referee relationships. I've loved watching the World Cup and the football. I think there's been some brilliant games, some brilliant spectacles, and I think I don't know a great deal about football refereeing, but some brilliant refereeing performances as well. But one of the things that I don't envy in their job massively is that ability to have the perceived relationship on field with players. And I guess that's where rugby needs to maintain, and we need to maintain doing that. How we do that is obviously down to individual style, but we're not there to be mates and pals with the players on field, but we're also not there to be rude and disrespectful either. So we got to find that middle ground somewhere, whilst trying to keep the game as lawful and close to that law book as possible. When you put those things into a mix, and that consistency word is even harder to achieve. So that we get it, and I think as referees we understand that people want a consistency, whatever you want to call it. I just hope that consistency theme is measured against people who know their rugby, that it's not always possible, because rugby is so unique and so grey at times. You do very rarely get 2 of exactly the same moments back to back. Very, very rarely. And if they are exactly the same, well, of course they should be treated the same. But there's always a little something different, which has to be considered as well.
Yeah. No, I love that. And it's nothing to do with refereeing. It's just every game, whether it's regardless if you're backing your team and it's, that's a tough opponent. So what's in front of you? It's the 80 minutes that's in front of you. It's not, they thumped you the last time round. It's just a different, and I imagine that's the same how you approach games as well. It's just every game's different. You don't know what's going to come. You don't know if players are going to be lippy or.
Yeah, and I think the harder games sometimes is, I did the Barbarians against New Zealand in November, and I've never done a Barbars game. It was a really hard game to approach, because we're aware that people want to watch Barbarians games of scoring tries, and they want to watch flamboyant rugby and to let some things go, whereas we're then also trying to put a certain kind of element of consistency. Again, that word comes up, but we're trying to make sure that we're entering that game properly, and those games are always a bit trickier. I think the great thing about doing some of the top bigger games is that you can just enter it with a pure mindset of just to referee the game, and whatever happens. And one of the brilliant things at the moment about rugby, I think, is I've never seen so many games that everyone believes is dead and believes is one-way traffic and the game is finished, and then the opposition come back in and win it or come close to. And we've got to try and make sure that stays as the positive advert for rugby and nothing else.
Yeah, no, I love I love how unpredictable games are. I mean, you work in the Premiership, so you're like in the most unpredictable league out there. Realistically, I mean, how many times have you been in like a Quins game, for example, and they're getting beat 25 points, 20 minutes to go, and they somehow win it?
Yeah, and that makes sometimes our job a little bit easier because, we know that we have to keep refereeing it properly. Some of the harder games as you're coming through the levels is where you get a blowout of a 50-point or a 60-point game. And, we work in a sport that apart from the professional end, you have that ability to apply a lot of empathy. Nobody wants to watch kids rugby where someone's being beaten by 40, 50 points. So then you do approach that slightly different, and it's not cheating, it's not making things up, you just employ the law book a bit differently. I think the professional end is far different. But I think, that level now of games, and especially in the Premiership, where we're seeing teams come back from the dead or even, be a 3-point game throughout, it means that we as match officials have to do everything by the book, and makes your job slightly easier, but also harder as well, because you're aware that every single decision you give is so important. And going in, especially into the last quarter of a match, especially, that can be match defining, because a team might win or lose because of that one decision, and that's when we know we get the kickback and the storm from everyone else. So yeah, it's an interesting time.
Have you ever had to just call off a game because of the scoreline? Has it ever been you look at, maybe not in professional, but have you ever just looked at a scoreboard and there's no coming back from this? That's it. We're finished.
I think at lower levels, I think there is a rule that a team can be beaten by so many points before you got to call it. And I think at junior levels, especially, maybe it's 30 or 50 points. I'm not quite sure, but no, not in recent times. The good thing with bonus points and the good thing with everyone playing for a job, I guess, is that everyone has to continue playing regardless of the scoreline. That makes it so much more competitive.
That's a good point, actually. I always got told, now you could confirm this or not, I always got told that in professional level that once it got past a certain score, the ref can call it off. But I don't think it's ever got to that stage. I'm
not aware of it. The only law you can call it off is that after 60 minutes and due to weather, and that scoreline stands, obviously. Okay. But it's that 60-minute buffer for weather and for anything a bit odd. But no, not so much a score. But there are some games you do wish ended a bit quicker than others, and some games where you wish will go on forever. It's just depending on how that game rolls out.
No, that's fair. You've been alongside some of the best refs ever, arguably ever. Who is your dream game day assistant and TMO? So you are the man in the middle, and you could also pick what fixture. It could be your dream fixture.
It's tricky, and I don't want to sit on the fence with it. I mean, any of the World Rugby refs who operated for the last 2-3 years all have that level of experience that you desire to be on the touch. So when you're at your moment of need with a tricky TMO decision or a hard moment in the game at a set of scrums, you want the best people at their job on the touchline or in the box to help you. But then you bring into the relationship part as friends and colleagues who you worked with for a number of years. And the English guys that I've worked with are always great fun. And whenever you go abroad and you've got their company, that you know that they've got your back in those moments of difficulty. I mean, even this weekend, for example, I was in France doing an exchange program for the top 14 and did Clermont v Montpellier and had 2 of the French guys running touch and a French guy number 4 and 5. And you then learn how good they are at their job as well. And this is not saying that everyone's brilliant. You're going to have those people who are better than others. That's the same in any walk of life. But I think depending on the game, depending where it is, you just want the people who are best at their job. So at that moment of need, you know they're there to help you and will help you get the best decision possible. But also be a good person and a good social person off it as well, because this job is pretty tough going now in those bigger games, and you want to make sure that the first thing I want to do back in the change rooms is before everyone gets phones out and starts worrying about games and gets some texts and comments, is just sit back with a cold beer and just take it in. And that's one thing I remember from the South Africa New Zealand in the summer, is just going back into the change room and having my team around me just for a second, regardless of what did or didn't happen on the pitch, regardless of the scoreline, is just absorb that, we had Ellis Park, which was rammed to the rafters, and we had aeroplanes flying over before as a bit of an entrance to the game, and just to absorb all that and realize that probably won't ever happen in anytime soon in the game I'm involved in. So to enjoy that moment, and before you go on to obviously dissect the game, and rightly so, and accept the criticism or the praise or whatever may be coming with it. It's just to take that moment in, because they don't have them very often.
No, I love that. That's a very good answer. Have you got a competition that you like, your favourite competition to referee?
I don't know. Look, there's tournaments that are closer to home, I guess, and you know, and I grew up watching the Six Nations or the Five Nations as a kid, and I've grown up watching the Premiership and the European Cup, and to be involved in those now are massively special. And then when you get to referee teams, you know, the Southern Hemisphere teams, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, Argentina, and now Japan coming to it as well, and some of the other tier 2 sides and coming into it is really, really special. You know, I'll never forget the first time that I stood in front of the haka at Eden Park in one of my first tests down there a few years ago, and then you get to go to these unique stadiums in Australia where, you know, it's different. The weather's nice, the sun's shining, and you then go to South Africa where everybody knows everything about rugby, and every TV channel you turn on has rugby on, and all those unique things that are so special about being involved in the sport is pretty cool. But I would say that, you know, that Six Nations and European Cup up here is really nice to be involved with, because they're the ones that I grew up watching, and, you know, watching those games on BBC or ITV as a kid, and will be one of those things that I miss if the game ever comes away from terrestrial TV, because I think that's one thing that keeps rugby quite unique to that weekend, and the fact that, you know, you could turn on the telly and you've got those voices that are so recognizable. You know, you can close your eyes and know what sport will be on the telly. That's how I remember growing up watching rugby, and, you know, I hope that remains the same for the future as well.
I'd like to think it is. I think it's in that night. I actually think it's actually going to go back to like free to watch television. I don't think it's going to stay behind a paywall.
It's a difficult balance. You know, we now live in a world where money's tight for everybody and everything, let alone professional sport. And, you know, it's we got to get the balance right between creating a product that is commercially viable, and that's well above my pay grade, but making sure, if we don't do that, we'll lose. We've sadly lost 2 teams already in England this year, and if we lose many more, the whole league becomes, you know, an item that isn't as attractive as it was a year and a half ago. So we've got to make sure that the money comes in, but is also accessible for everybody as well, which I'm sure that the bosses are working pretty hard on making sure they're doing so.
So that grey area that we were kind of talking about earlier as well, though, like, do you just go free, or do you just, we're like, how many games do you give away for free? How many?
I think the free to air thing is an amazing topic, and I think it's people will. There's like every single argument with everything in the world, there are pluses and negatives to it. I think we've got to get people watching rugby and enjoying rugby again. I don't think we've lost that, but we've got to get people into it and actually get in that same momentum. You've only got to look at the women's game at the moment and how much excitement there is behind that. Now, it's the same sport, but it's accessible, and we've got to make sure that everyone's accessible to it, whilst also balancing the books as well. You know, we can't be expected to draw salaries and pay mortgages from it if there's no money coming in the front end. So yeah, I'll carry on blowing a whistle, but I'll let the big wigs sort out how much money comes in or doesn't. As long as it keeps coming in is the important thing.
Yeah, we'll just leave it to the higher ups to decide that. I'm not in any position either to.
But rugby's got to remain strong to its roots as well, and we can't make the whole thing about money, in my opinion.
Of course.
But also, you know, making sure that it's viable, which is obviously a very, very hard balancing act.
Yeah, again, let's leave it to the people that can that spend like 8 years as an accountant or anything. Just use
exactly.
You can figure that out. And we have got some fan questions for you as well. Look, Ollie Wallace, he's managed to slide 2 in. So he's asked, what's the nicest player gesture you've received? And I'll go to the next one in a little bit.
Player gesture. There's always those players that will pop in after a game, and there are certain countries who will do it. You know, regardless of win or lose or draw, they'll make sure that someone comes in with a couple of cans of beer for the referees, and they'll hang around just for 10 minutes. And I think those little unique gestures are pretty cool. Donica Ryan will always do it. I remember when he played for Racing, and he's now obviously coaching at La Rochelle, but he would have always made a beeline to come into the ref's room, and regardless of what may have happened or not happened in the game, in being sociable and chatting. And there are these individuals out there that recognize that everyone's doing it, or everyone started doing it for the right reasons. And we as refs aren't after sympathy at saying how hard or difficult the job is. Whilst it might be difficult and challenging, we want to be out there as well. It's a choice that we wanted to do it to begin with. So, you've got those individuals who will always do that. That we've always had coaches and nice players from various countries who will make efforts to do certain things. And, those are the little reminders to say that why we do it and why we're involved in it. And hopefully that, again, another thing that we hope that will stay continuing along this professional journey.
Yeah. Free beer. Who doesn't like free beer?
Exactly.
Doesn't matter who it's from. Just
cheap way to a referee's heart, I tell you.
Exactly. I'm going to flip it a little bit, though, because Hayley Kitcher has asked the worst player to ref, and it kind of leads into, have you ever wanted to tell a referee, a player to off?
I'd be lying if I didn't. I think every walk of life you meet some people that you don't kind of get on with. And I think one of the things that all we ask for as refs is just that respect bit. Yeah. And respect goes both ways. It goes to players and it goes to referees as well. So it's got to be a two-way street. And we understand that when we don't give that respect out, then how can we kind of ask for it back? Excuse me. But there are some players that will grind you more than others, of course. And I'm looking forward to, well, not looking forward, but when I ever retire, then I can, and I can mention them more than I can now. But
you can name names, but
what I would say is the vast majority of players and coaches are decent people, and that's all you kind of ask to be involved in this sport. Same as refs. If we can be decent people, then hopefully we get that respect back as well. And we work in a game that's based on respect, and we've got to make sure that remains so.
I actually want to praise you because obviously I've not had the chance to speak to you directly about this, and I think it was last season actually. It was the Exeter Saracens game, and you gave a penalty to Chiefs, and Billy Van der Poel started mouthing, and you went, right, 10 metres back. And you just don't see that often. Like we always got told, like when I was growing up at age grade, that if you talk back to the referee and you're not the captain, you get sent back 10 metres. And it happened, and you went, right, 10 metres back. He said something else, and you're like, right, another 10. I was just like, keep going. I'm loving that.
It's, again, it's that line in the sand bit that we discussed earlier, but we've got to be accessible and approachable to players. Yeah. And respectful. All we ask for that is back. And if they don't, then the law book is there to kind of back us up. I think we've seen a shift. I think players have realised that maybe our game was on a downward spiral. And we can't forget as well, and one thing that we remind ourselves regularly at Twickenham, I'm back up tomorrow for meetings, is whatever we do at the higher end, the visible end on TV, is what's replicated down the line at a local level, where, when I call real rugby, where the vast majority of people actually play and coach and referee. Yeah. So we've got to kind of set a standard, an acceptable standard. Otherwise, all we do is drive that down. And what we might think is a challenge or rude behaviour at the top end gets pretty bad at the lower end. So we got to make sure that we're kind of setting the bar where we are to begin with.
I think the worst thing I ever seen as a player on the pitch. Now I came back to play for this team just as a favour. They needed numbers. Came off the bench. Their captain got red carded. I can't even remember what it was for, but can't be great if it was a straight red. He went for the referee. Like he wanted to fight this referee for giving a red card. I was like, mate, away you go. Because that's not happening.
Oh, no, there's I don't know for individuals. There's numerous cases around the country in England that we've had that. And the bottom line is, if we carry on having that, then rugby's dead and buried. You won't have referees joined. You won't have referees do it for free on a weekend. And everyone forgets that whilst we're very lucky at the higher end in the Premiership and professional game to be paid for what we do, the majority of referees, the majority of players, and the majority of coaches don't get anything. So, there's a time and a place for behaviour. And sorry, the dog's just crying to go out, but they certainly don't.
That's not good, though.
They don't. We can't have that experience anywhere.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, I've seen it, and I think I kind of just looked to the coach and went, "That's your captain, is it?" Like, really?
Yeah, exactly. That, and luckily, those cases are few and far in between.
We'll go for the other question from Ollie now. He's asked your "I made it" moment.
Difficult, really, because everyone has their own ambitions in their career, and that bar just gets increased and keeps going up and up for every level that I can speak for myself that I do. I want to get to the next bit. So Well, I don't think I've achieved that yet. I haven't had that kind of moment. I've had recognition points in my career where I've looked around and thought this is pretty cool and this is what I wanted to be and where I wanted to get to. And down in New Zealand, France in 2018, doing that game was that my first tier 1 game was pretty special. And following that, doing the European final a couple of years ago was an experience that I won't forget. And again, the Challenge Cup final in Marseille last year this year was pretty cool as well. And just those moments where you think, yeah, it's a culmination of lots of work, lots of time away, lots of travel, lots of good games, bad games, and just that kind of ability to stick in it, because this job is all about those people who can last the longest. And not every game will be perfect, and as long as you can hang in there, then you stand a chance at doing the next thing. So yeah, I haven't quite achieved that moment yet, but hopefully that will come around at some point before I retire.
Can you tell us what the moment is, or are we just going to have to wait?
It's World Cups. That'll be my goal, and my goal is to attend another World Cup in 2023, and to do some of the big games of the World Cup in 2023. That would be my ultimate kind of goal. But the old cliche which you hear from players all the time is to focus every week has never been so more relevant for refereeing, because for weeks on end you can go without anything, and all of a sudden you get a little bit unlucky and you've got 2 or 3 hard games back to back, and the perception of you has changed. So it's just managing to get out there every week and put into practice what you've been training at and what you've been doing to get you to that level, and just sustaining it. And the really good referees will hang around in there for, as Wayne has shown, for now 101 games, which is an achievement that can't be knocked, because it's to stay in the mix for that long and that amount of years is pretty unique.
Yeah, I mean, Luke Pearce is going to get 102.
We'll see. I'm hoping so. But we'll the future we'll see. But we'll just have to hang in there as long as I can.
I mean, again, I'm not just saying this because you're here. I have said this to countless people whether I'm at the game or watching the game. See, the minute it comes up that you're the match official, it's like a breath of relief. Like, okay, it's gonna be good. It's good. There is obviously every fan, every team has certain referees when they read it and they're like, God, not another one. But for me, with you especially, Wayne Barnes, obviously Nigel Owens before he retired, when you see that you're the match official, I'm like, okay, it's going to be good. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be fair. There's not going to be anything.
Yeah, no, it's very kind. Like we work hard at this kind of art and making sure that we're trying to make the game as good as possible. And not everybody recognise that all the time and understand why they don't. But we're not out there to ruin games. Surprisingly so. We're there to actually try and make the best of what we got in front of us. And you can't always make a good game bad, but as a referee, you can easily make you can't always make a bad game good, but you can easily make a good game bad as a ref. And we're very aware of that and what we do.
That's fair. It's just, I think, obviously, a lot of people will just bitch and moan about referees regardless. And I don't think I was in the same boat, but I never understood it. And then we had Ben on, now we've got you on, and it does open, referees are just people as well. But I think people think that a lot of people forget that. You're not robots, you're not built, the laws book isn't just built into your memory. You have to constantly learn, you're constantly trying to improve.
Exactly. And we've got to make sure that we're coming across as approachable as well. And that's one big thing that we're driving ahead of 2023, is that we don't want to hide behind excuses when we get decisions wrong, but we also don't want to be lambasted either, because players drop a ball, somebody misses a kick, and we make mistakes as well. So finding the balance and act of that in getting the general public to be aware of what is the right or wrong decision in a really tough example, and we've got to be open to accept that without then also devaluing the credentials of that referee. And getting that is a really hard thing to do, and I kind of don't think it's been perfected yet, if I'm really honest.
Don't think anything's bad has came out of you, and I don't think that's going to happen ever, realistically. Again, you'll get the Muppets online that'll say something, and I'm like, I kind of just read some comments, regardless if it's you, Ben, Wayne, Pascal, whatever. I read them and I'm just like, could you do better? Could user 239764 whatever? Could you do better? Could they do better at it? Probably not.
No, but look, I guess sometimes the bigger anything gets, the more attention it creates, and that will be the nature of the beast. And something that everyone's still trying to grow rugby. Remember, it's only still relatively small in the terms of the other big sports around the world. So, we've got to try and keep growing it, and that will bring with it some of the people that want to post comments. We just got to kind of live with that, and hopefully the good bit will come through rather than the bad bit.
There's more good than bad, and the bad will just get left behind.
Exactly. We hope so.
I hope. We've got another fan question. It's from Dan McFarlane, and I've had to bracket how he's worded this. So you're in the Six Nations, you're refereeing Ireland versus France, and if Ireland's result helps affect England to do better, how do you put biasness or the club you support or the country you support to the side when you're refereeing? Does that make sense? I don't know if
of course. And even bringing it down from international level to Premiership level, I referee Exeter now. I mean, I live in the city, but it makes no bearing on my performance or my decision making, whatever happens in that game. Because when I cross over that whitewash, it's Team A v Team B, and we are so analysed and so audited now at the professional end that there's literally no room to consider anything anyway. When something happens, we just got to go through our normal processes, of which we have plenty now, and we know that scrutiny of TMOs and decisions on TMOs is so important that we can't even consider those things. And if I'm honest, if I had the intelligence enough to be thinking that whilst refereeing a Six Nations game especially, then I'm probably in the wrong job as a referee. But it's certainly it doesn't even come into your mind. It really doesn't. And I hope that'll be the same for every single referee out there, regardless of what level they're doing.
No, that's fair. That's good. I thought it was just interesting because obviously you are a big rugby fan. You love rugby, so you've obviously got your clubs, your country that you support. So probably when you're not working, you're probably yes, go on, and then. But like you said, as soon as you cross that white line, it's a whole different animal.
Yeah, and I'm a supporter. Exeter Saracens down here in my local club. I went to their cup final back in March and I supported them rather than South Molton, who they were playing. It's natural, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I certainly don't have a team who I support in the professional end because you spend so long working in it. And maybe one day when I do finish, is that I will actually support a team again. But until that point, all we end up doing is just watching rugby for learning reasons. And we support. There's no doubt that I'll support England in the Six Nations and in the World Cup. Doesn't mean that I'll affect my performance if I referee someone else. It definitely doesn't. So, and if it ever happens, when we're in a really dangerous area of the world, aren't
we? Yeah, that's fair. We've got one more fan question before we go into something a little bit different. It's from James Mooney. He's asked, have you heard about the tribe talking ref tier system? I don't know. No. So basically, James is an Exeter Chiefs fan. He does a Chiefs fan podcast, and they do a tier system. And I have to let you know, you're not ranked yet because you've not done a Chiefs game this season.
This season, no, I haven't. I haven't done a Premiership game since Saracens back in October, so I'm back in. I think over Christmas time, so we'll end up and seeing if I can get down there, and hopefully the lads will put me in the top bracket. But we'll see how we get on.
There you go. I'll let them know that. And now we're going now into getting to know Luke. So it's more personal. It's nothing to do with refereeing or the games itself. It's just to get to know you as a person.
Yep.
So what is your favourite style of food or food cuisine, as you could put it?
Food cuisine, probably Italian. There's nothing I love more than getting home on a Saturday from a game and getting a pizza or something in and just chilling out.
Nice. What's your favourite pizza topping?
Probably go margarita. Very boring. Doesn't sum up my personality entirely, but one that I enjoy the most.
It's a classic, though. You can't beat that.
Exactly.
Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Time and a place, but I wouldn't go for it normally. But we'll, I can understand. I can understand why people do like it.
Oh no, and I've learned, speaking to Southern Hemisphere guests, it's not just pineapple on pizza down there. It's pineapple on burgers. And no, don't do it. It's just a big no for me. I don't know why.
Yeah, you're mixing sweet with savoury a bit, but no, I can understand why people do like it from time to time, but it wouldn't be something that I'd definitely go for.
That's fine.
Depends how many pints I'm down at the time. We'll cross that bridge another time.
Nice. We're going into that then. What's your favourite post-match drink? And we don't mean the waters or the protein shakes or
nothing better than a Guinness, especially at the moment where the winter's in and the weather's so cold.
That's so good.
I do enjoy a few pints of Guinness, but it's that's the one downside about our job, sadly, is that the majority of the time in England we're on the road. You know, we're travelling straight back, and we haven't got the luxury of sitting on a bus and having a couple of cans. And when you get home at 9:30, 10 o'clock to crack a can open and put match of the day on is quite a nice treat in this sad little world we live in.
Actually sounds all right. I quite like the sound of that, actually. Just before we go into the next question, if you are doing the Six Nations and you're up in Edinburgh, I will happily have a Guinness or 2 or 3 or 10.
That sounds good. That sounds very nice. I do enjoy Edinburgh. It's a really good, nice city. Good social afterwards. It's always good to visit.
Yeah, so if you're up, just give me a shout, because I'm fairly close to Edinburgh, so Edinburgh's like my city in a way. It's I
look forward to it.
That's the best I could describe it. What's your favourite film?
I would say I watched Top Gun 2, whatever it is, Top Gun, whatever the word is, Maverick, on a flight a few weeks ago, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hadn't watched Top Gun first one. I heard a lot about it, but I need to go and watch it again and watch the first one. But yeah, definitely up there for me.
Fair enough. You need to watch the first one.
Exactly. I need to go back and revisit the classic, I think, first before I watch the second one again.
Yeah, binge watch it back to back if you've got the time for it.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll try and find the time somewhere.
Your favourite song or music genre?
Ooh, difficult. I'm not known for my musical choice, but I would say anything that's kind of 2 or 3 years old. It probably takes me that long to come around to me to listen to it. I'm useless at this current modern day stuff because I don't listen much to the radio either. So yeah, anything that's been around a little longer than others then is normally in my Spotify playlist. But
nice.
other than that, I'm a pretty boring kind of listen to the same stuff.
What kind of artists? What's your top 3 artists usually?
Some of the classics. Quite like a Dire Straits album. Fleetwood Mac. Some of the older stuff, being from my parents who drilled it into me a long time ago, but not all the time. I actually went to watch Biffy Clyro a few weeks ago, which was
nice. I love Biffy Clyro.
Which was very different, but thoroughly enjoyed it. So whilst I won't be going to many rock concerts, it was certainly one that I'll definitely go back and see live again.
Ah, nice. And I love the variety you've just offered up there.
Yeah, well, variety is the spice of life, eh? So it's trying to stay in the mix.
What was your best subject at school? I imagine it was PE, but I'd like to be wrong.
Always enjoy PE. I enjoy geography, and working in a job now where we travel a lot is always quite nice.
Yeah, just kind of merge the two
to know where you're going. But yeah, it's probably I'd say geography. Maths was definitely not a strong point. Science neither. So yeah, I'd probably put geography up there with one of my favourites.
Nice. I'm glad you don't like math either, because I got in trouble with maths for something to this day still makes no sense to me. So the teacher wrote this big massive equation on the chalkboard. Right, copy this down. So you start writing it and he goes, "You will not need this in life unless you want to be a math teacher." So I shut my jotter. I don't want to be a math teacher. And I got in trouble for it because I was not following orders to write it down.
Sounds to me like your maths teacher make a good referee. We'll see if they're interested.
Just keep everyone on their toes. Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah. Have you got any hobbies away from rugby?
I love cycling. Thoroughly enjoy cycling. Try and play golf from time to time. Doesn't always happen finding time, but yeah, those 2 things would probably be my main interest outside of rugby. But again, it's winter now, middle of December, so having the ability or even the balls to get out there and get out in the cold in your warm layers is a bit different. I haven't been out for a while, but we've got a cycle group down here in Exeter that I try and get out with as and when I'm home, and hopefully we'll get a couple of chances for a Christmas ride with a couple of pints at the end. But again, the thought of getting out in the freezing cold and rain isn't quite as appealing as the gym, but hopefully we'll find some time soon. Yeah,
it's not appealing. Like, stay in and work out or try and get the same burn off by freezing. No, all good.
The David Lloyd gym that's air conditioned and nice and warm is a bit more appealing than the road.
There you go. Do you prefer to do strength and conditioning or cardio?
My preference would be cardio. I really enjoy, like I say, cycling and going for a nice long run or something. But in this job, you can't do that too much because you'd end up breaking yourself. So with that, the S&C side is obviously so important. I do enjoy it. I just prefer being in the fresh air a bit more and a bit more of my scene. But I've been doing it for 12 years. Probably got hopefully another 10 in the tank. So we'll have to keep on doing the S&C stuff, I guess.
Fair enough. I mean, I'd rather be like lifting weights than going for a run. I don't mind cycling. I like cycling, but
It is good. It's just again finding the time and having a spare 2 or 3 hours to get out on your bike is a bit more challenging when you're doing as much traveling as we are.
I don't travel as much as you, but having a young one keeps you on your toes, as you'll know as well. So
exactly, yeah. 2 of them definitely keep me on our toes. So we'll keep on working on that.
No, one's enough.
Yeah.
Have you got any tattoos?
None. I was at a wedding in Santorini in July, at a friend's wedding, and with some family and friends, and a few of us were on about trying to get to tattoos, and we ended up not bothering. I think I'm too much of a wimp to get them. I'm not quite sure my pain threshold's not quite there to get a tattoo, but never say never. We'll see how we get on.
I was just gonna say, all tattoos hurt. Don't listen to people that say, "Oh, it doesn't hurt." They do. They all hurt. But it's that weird. It's a weird pain that you want to get an R1.
Right, I'll believe you before I get another one. We can get my first one. That's something I'll wait and see what happens.
Just get like a little whistle, like in the.
Yeah, maybe when I finish it. I'm not quite sure that I'm so out at the moment.
Fair enough. Obviously you've travelled around the world for work, but what's your ideal vacation?
Holiday, sit on a beach somewhere, read a book, enjoy a beer in the sunshine, and just chill out with my favorite thing. But yeah, again, trying to find a spare month to do that at the moment, where the league and the season kind of just rolls into one is a bit more challenging. But hopefully at some point soon I'll be on a beach sipping a beer in the sunshine. But here's hoping.
I was going to just say, do you get any time off as a referee, or not really?
We tend to get, well, it depends. The season changed so much, and we used to be quite religious on having July off, before whole COVID hit, and now the summer tours have been pushed back because the season's been pushed back. So it just tends to be whenever we get a chance. And if you're lucky enough to be in the Rugby Championship, then that'll depend whether you're in August or September. And you've got to try and find time where you you can. And our bosses are pretty good and they're pretty respectful of trying to find some time to get away with family and bits and pieces. But it again, finding that element of time within these windows of Premiership, European Cup to internationals is hard, and you want to be available for every big game as you can. And if you take yourself out of that availability, then you might be doing yourself some injustice. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be plenty of time for holidays in the future, hopefully. And this is just a time where you want to try and be as ambitious as possible and do as many big games as you can. So and just enjoy that grind at the moment.
No, I love that, and I love the drive you have as well to keep going and getting more games and big games. And that's why I said you're getting 102, because I could see the drive. You're getting it.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, hopefully, I'm on 42 at the moment, so it's a fair old trek to get there. But we'll crack on and see how we get on.
Just tick every box. Like, yeah, I could do that one. Yeah, I could do that one.
Exactly.
Even just lie, like, oh yeah, I'm English, but I could do the England game. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure I'd want to referee England at the moment. We do a lot of work with them, and it's that's one team that I'd kind of like prefer to sit in the stands and watch at the moment, to be honest.
That's
fair.
Which actor would you like to play you in the film or movie about Luke Pearce?
Ooh, which actor? Again, I would say films is not one of my best subjects. Always like a Hugh Grant film. Always enjoy a George Clooney. So I'd like to go one of those two. But then I'm punching well above my weight there, I think.
We'll go Hugh Grant. I think he could do your accent quite well. So there you go.
Oh, there we go.
We'll take it, and he's got range now, so he doesn't just do other lovey-dovey films. So why not?
So I hear. Yeah. So I hear. Well, yeah. So we'll one day we'll see how the refereeing world goes before I enter that round.
And what would the film be called? Or would you just have your story? Or
yeah, I've never even given any thought. I'm not quite sure the referees live enough of a lifestyle to attract a filmmaker. Maybe one day, maybe Nigel can get that gig. We'll leave that to Nigel on the farm.
That's fair. You can't, whoever it is, whoever the film's about, you cannot call it the final whistle because we'll come after you. We don't have we don't have the money for it, but we'll try.
we'll leave it there.
Yeah. The most famous contact in your phone.
Famous contact in my phone. Blimey. Not many, because most of them are rugby related.
Rugby famous works.
Rugby famous. I mean, Barnsley's up there now, isn't he? And he seems to be on everything. He's already in the phone. Listen, there's a few in there. How often they get in contact or not is a different kettle of fish. But I'll leave it at that.
That's fair. We'll take Wayne Barnes because he is a rock star and most capped for a reason. So
exactly.
Just because it is coming to that time of year, what would Luke Pearce like for Christmas?
I would like a weekend off for Christmas. That would be my one present that I would love. Whether I'm going to get it or not in the near future, I'll have to speak to my bosses tomorrow. But a weekend off and a weekend of no rugby, just to kick back and relax, would be definitely one that I'd like.
There you go. Give the man a weekend off.
Well, we'll see. It's coming to our busy time of year now. Around Christmas, everybody wants to go to the rugby, which is great for get the tills ringing. It's not so good if you're involved in it, having to work Christmas Eve or New Year's Day. So it's the choice of job we go into.
That's very true. Final question for you tonight, Luke. One thing you'd like to be remembered for?
I would like to be remembered in my refereeing for being a decent person, and a decent person who's got a good element of management and charisma balanced with a bit of communication. And that's not pre-scripted either. I'm not a referee who's going to get everything right. I don't think any referee is good enough to get everything right, but how they present themselves and deliver themselves is really important to me. So hopefully when I'm, in my 50s and I'm sat back watching rugby in a bar somewhere or at a stadium, people will remember that. And hopefully we as referees in general will be remembered for that rather than people who ruin games or to blow a whistle against their team. That's certainly one thing that I'll remember for.
That's fair. And I love that answer. And just like that, the book is now closed. You've absolutely smashed every question and you've gave a really good insight onto how referees operate and how they work. And yeah, it's been an absolute blast. I can't thank you enough for agreeing to come on.
No, thank you for inviting me, mate. Appreciate it. We can get 2 minutes off my dinner now. That'd be great.
Yeah, happy days. This has been the final whistle with Luke Pearce, and we will see you next time.